You know, you've probably heard someone say that learning a language is all about practice, 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 almost like you're training a muscle. Well, for a long time, that wasn't just a saying. It was actually the core idea behind a huge teaching method that totally took over classrooms. So today, we're going to break down what that method was all about, and more importantly, where it all went wrong.
It really all boils down to this one question. Is language a physical skill that you can master with muscle memory, kind of like riding a bike, or is it something else? This very question was right at the heart of a major shakeup in how we teach languages.
Back in the 1950s and 60s, the answer to that question seemed pretty obvious. The top method on the scene was called the audio-lingual method, or ALM for short, and it was built on this one simple but really powerful idea. Language is nothing more than a set of habits.
So, what does that actually mean? Well, instead of making you memorize endless lists of vocabulary words, ALM was all about the structure, the patterns of a language. The whole point was to drill these grammatical patterns into your head over and over until using them felt as natural and automatic as, well, breathing. Yep, at its very heart, the belief was that your native language is just a bunch of deeply ingrained habits. So, to learn a new language, you had to do two things. First, break the old habits from your first language, and then slowly and carefully build a brand new set of automatic responses in the new one.
Now, this wasn't just some random idea that a teacher dreamed up. Oh no, the audio-lingual method had some serious scientific backing. It was built on the foundations of two of the biggest, most influential theories of the day.
And this is where it gets really interesting because you had this sort of perfect storm of ideas. On one side, you had structural linguistics, which gave teachers the what to teach. It said language is basically just a big system of patterns. Then on the other side, you had behavioral psychology from people like B.F. Skinner, which gave them the how. It said all learning is just conditioning. You form habits through repetition and getting rewarded. Put them together, and you've got what looked like a completely foolproof scientific way to teach a language.
So these theories led to some very strict rules in the classroom. The teacher's number one job? Prevent mistakes. Any mistake, because an error could create a bad habit. If a student did make a mistake, it was corrected right there on the spot. And you could forget about using your native language. That was totally forbidden, seen as the source of all your bad habits. You wouldn't get any long grammar explanations either. Nope. You were just supposed to absorb the patterns through endless drills, getting a very good every time you got it right until the whole thing became second nature.
So what did this actually look and feel like? Honestly, if you walked into one of these classrooms, it wouldn't feel much like a class at all. It was more like a workout session, a really intense, structured gym for your mouth. This quote just captures the vibe perfectly. The teacher was the absolute center of everything, the conductor of this orchestra. They weren't there to help you explore the language. They were there to direct you, to control every sound you made, making sure every student's response was perfectly in sync.
The whole method was also designed to follow the natural way we learn as kids. It was all about the oral skills first. You listen, then you speak. That's it. Things like reading and writing, they were seen as way less important and were only brought in much later in the process.
Okay, to really get a feel for this, let's look at one of their classic techniques. Let's say a sentence was too long for the students to repeat perfectly in one go. The teacher would use something called the backward build-up drill.
They'd start at the very end of the sentence. The teacher would say, post office, and the whole class would repeat it back in perfect unison. Post office.
Then they'd add the next chunk, working backward, to the post office. And the class repeats, to the post office. The rhythm here is everything.
And finally, you get the whole sentence, I'm going to the post office, and the class nails it. By building it up from the back, the teacher could guarantee a perfect repetition of the full sentence every single time.
Another really common one was the substitution drill. So once the class had mastered a pattern like, I'm going to the post office, the teacher would just shout out a new word, like the bank. And the students, like a machine, had to instantly slot that word into the pattern and respond, I'm going to the bank. The goal wasn't really about understanding what you were saying. It was about mastering that grammatical slot.
So, you'd think all of this intense drilling would create amazing speakers, right? And in a way, it did. Students got incredibly good at these classroom exercises. But a huge problem started to show up, a crack in the very foundation of the method.
And this became the million-dollar question. After all those months, maybe even years of drilling, could a student actually walk out of that classroom and just have a normal, everyday, spontaneous conversation?
And the answer, way too often, was a big, fat no. This was the method's fatal flaw.
They called it a lack of transfer. Students were like perfect little robots inside the controlled world of the classroom, but they couldn't improvise. They couldn't take those perfectly drilled habits and use them in the messy, unpredictable real world.
Now, right around the same time this practical problem was becoming clear, a massive intellectual challenge was brewing that was about to completely tear down the whole idea of language being just a set of habits.
And this is where the whole thing just crumbles. This idea, famously argued by the linguist Noam Chomsky, was a direct attack on Skinner's behaviorism. It was an absolute bombshell. Chomsky basically said, look, language is fundamentally creative. Every single day you create and understand sentences that you have never, ever heard before. How could a simple habit-forming model explain that? It couldn't. It was this ghost in the machine that behaviorism had no answer for.
And this just perfectly sums up the big lesson from the rise and fall of the audiolingual method. Language isn't just a behavior you can condition like a dog salivating at a bell. It's this incredibly complex, creative, cognitive tool that lets our brains generate infinite meaning.
So that leaves us with the question that language teachers and learners are still grappling with today. When you're trying to learn a new language, what's really more important? Is it mastering perfect grammar and patterns? Or is it about building the confidence to communicate your ideas creatively, even if you know you're going to make some mistakes along the way?